Good evening and welcome to Inside Texas Tech with Chancellor Ken Hansen. I'm your host, Robert Giovanetti. Thanks for joining us. Stress. We all have it. Some of us have it on overdrive. It's something the Chancellor is familiar with and likes to address with tips and tricks in his leadership class. Let's take a look.
The stressful things, and this is important, don't let things bother you that may not be a problem. You've heard me say this before, what was the biggest problem in your life a year ago last Tuesday? I don't know. A year from next Tuesday, you won't know what was the biggest problem today. The only ones you would know was when there's been a major change in some relationship. You might think back to a death, a marriage, breakup in a relationship, those things. But most of all, don't over worry problems. Mark Twain said, I've had a lot of worries in my life, of most of which did not come true. Have you ever worried about something and then the day happened and it just was a non-event? Are you worried about somebody saying something that you had a conflict with somebody and you were thinking, they're going to say this and I'll say this, and they'll say this and I'll say this. And you just get yourself all worked up. And you get there and, the next morning they say, hey, how you doing? You were supposed to say, what? It just ruins your day. Good. Stay away from those conflicts. If you have stress, it will follow you. There's a couple of kinds of stress. There's personal stress. Someone that's going through a divorce. Someone that's lost a loved one. There's business stress. You've got numbers that you need to have in your business and sales or whatever. And you're behind. And that's business stress. The one thing about stress, if you don't work on it, if it's at the office, it'll follow you home. If it's at home, it'll follow you to the office. So you've really got to try to keep those from following you. You go home, and your spouse said, hey, how'd it go? How did it go? What do you mean, how'd it go? See, that's not a good way to start the conversation. You may be stressful, and you hadn't been able to vent all day, and they just come walking in. They're there. Boom. It's not good. You got to vent, some other way. And I've got a friend that goes bowling, and he doesn't even keep score. He just bowls as hard as he can. And he names the pins. That's a little much, but if that helps him, he sees them get knocked over and he jumps around like, But he does something on stress that really bothers him. And that stress of making a decision. Let's say you've got 2 job offers. I had a young lady come visit with me not long ago, and she was really stressed out. She had 2 job offers. And that both of them were good. And I could tell she was stressed out. And I said, look, what if you didn't have any job offers? I was helping talk to a kid, a high school recruit, that they were recruiting to play basketball at Texas Tech. And he had a lot of offers. And he was kind of stressed out. And I said, look, there are millions of 18-year-olds in this nation wish they had your stress. So look at the positive things that you can learn from stress. It's very important. You also need someone that you can talk to. And don't tell if you've got problems, don't go tell everybody. 1, they don't want to hear. And 2, they may repeat it, probably will. And if they do repeat it and it's sensational, others will repeat it. Don't get into a deal where you say, you know, such and such. I'll give you an example. When President Clinton was involved with Monica Lewinsky, there was a hotel I would stay in Dallas when I was up there for board meetings, and the front desk manager, I knew her and she knew a friend of mine, and she knew I'd been a congressman. And so I checked in just as that story had broken a couple days before, and she said, "What do you think about the president being involved with that intern?" And I said, he should have known that if he was going to be involved in a sexual relationship with an 18-year-old, she was going to tell everybody. I'm serious. Just stop and think about that. And this lady was about 35 or so, and she said, you know, I'm 35, and hell, if I was involved with the president, I'd tell everybody too. And I said, what if it was the janitor? She wouldn't tell anybody. And I said, and if you did, would they tell somebody else? Probably not. But if you told them, guess who I've been seeing? Scared y'all, didn't I? What'd he say? Guess who I've been seeing? The president. Y'all get out of town. Shut up. Really? And what did the girl in the bar say to her? The older lady. I can't remember her name. Save the dress. You know, you can tell certain things to people, and they might keep it confident. But if you have a deep secret, don't share it with people. You know, if it's a deep, dark secret, the best thing to do is not have a deep, dark secret. But if you do, don't go around sharing it with people, because it takes on a life of its own. Now, on the other hand, you can have a business advisor. I had a guy that advised me in politics, and he passed away about 3 years ago, and was a great guy. And I'd get upset about something, and he'd listen to my problem and something in the politics, and he would just explain it, and it just calmed me down. And that he could look at it from a different viewpoint. And one other thing that I wanted to talk about is not, as we go through emotions, stress, any type of reaction you have, control what you say to people. Control what you share. Control your emotions. Don't show off. And we've got a little film that we're going to show, and this is one of my favorites. Okay, stop it right there. Okay, now look, you got one fighter over here, right there. And watch him, but at the same time, watch the other guy up here. And this guy's real nervous. But watch the guy that's going to be the show-off, and we'll run it a couple times. But go ahead. What song would Willie Nelson sing on that? Y'all too young to know. Does anybody know who Willie Nelson is? What song would he sing? Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.
Chancellor Hance is always looking for ways to grow the Texas Tech System brand of excellence, searching far and wide for opportunities to forge partnerships that take Texas Tech System to the next level. He found just such an opportunity way around the world, Nigeria in fact.
With a few strokes of the pen, Chancellor Kent Hance and OYO Executive Governor Ibiola Ajimobi sealed the deal, exploring a partnership between the Texas Tech University system and Nigerian State University. With the partnership, students would earn a joint degree from both universities, studying at their home university for 2 years and then study at the partner institution to finish their degree. Chancellor Kent Hance expects to host up to 250 Nigerian students each year. Ajimobi says that the partnership with the Texas Tech system is an important step in furthering OYO State's education goals. OYO State was the first in Nigeria to provide a free education system and has developed its resources for educating students in primary and secondary schools by improving infrastructure. This gathering wasn't all business or academics. The governor and the chancellor took a little time to bang the drum. It's a gift from the governor. Take a look.
Right, okay,
Just
so you can.
behind on the strings. Yes.
It said Go Technical University and Go Texas Tech University.
When we return, we head down to Angelo State University and listen in on a fireside chat the Chancellor had with former First Lady Laura Bush. Plus, steeped in tradition, we'll take you to the Masked Rider Rain Transfer as Fearless Champion and Corey Wagner prepare to lead the charge. You're watching Inside Texas Tech with Chancellor Ken Hance only on Channel 5.
24 frames, Saturdays after Austin City Limits on KTTZ.
Angelo State University's Laura W. Bush Institute for Women recently rolled out the red carpet for its namesake. It was all part of the Day of the Woman event at Angelo State. Chancellor Hance caught up with the First Lady. Let's take a look.
I want to talk a little about some of the experiences you had. Talk about going to Buckingham Palace and meeting the Queen. I mean, that's something that we'd all like to hear a little about.
Well, George and I were invited to a state dinner in England, which meant that we stayed in Buckingham Palace. We had butlers of our own and everything. That was really pretty fabulous. And then had a beautiful state dinner there with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. And of course, it was thrilling. George and I couldn't believe two people from Midland, Texas were there staying in Buckingham Palace, but it was really a lot of fun and, you know, just an experience you can't imagine ever having.
Well, that would have been so elegant and everything, but also compare that to some of the travels you had in Afghanistan and what women face, the issues they face in Afghanistan.
Well, I went to Afghanistan 3 times while George was president, and since we've been home, we've hosted it at the Bush Institute that'll be part of our library building that we dedicate on April 25th. The Institute building will be part of it, but we started the programming as soon as we moved home, and we've had 2 conferences on Afghan women, and I just heard from one of the women who came to those conferences, an educator who actually risked her life and ran the secret schools for girls during the time of the Taliban in Afghanistan. And I just got a message from her. She was in the United States for a conference and sent a message that she's worried. She's worried about us leaving, the U.S. leaving, and the way women are going to be treated in Afghanistan, and I'm worried for them too. They've made huge strides. There's a governor now. I visited her in Bamiyan province when I went to Afghanistan that's female, and girls are all back in school. I think they think there are over 6 million children in school now in Afghanistan, including about 2 million girls. So I think we'll all be watching from the United States, and I frankly wish our troops had stayed there just a little bit longer. I think they're going to need it, but anyway, we'll see. The Afghan army is standing up, and that's good, and the Afghan police forces, so I think that's good. And they have a constitution that they did vote on, and women's rights are secured in that constitution, but of course you don't know if the Taliban will respect that constitution, and probably they won't.
How's the president doing?
George is doing
going
great.
to the ranch very often?
We haven't gone to the ranch that often. We went for the week of Easter. We try to schedule a week in March and April and May so we can see the wildflowers bloom there. But he's doing great. He's hosting the Wounded Warriors in the W100, which he did in the Big Bend. It's a bike ride. The first year we were home, and then last year they rode in the Paladura, and Amarillo hosted it. And so now they're going to ride in Waco and at our ranch, and Waco's hosting the ride for the Wounded Warriors. So as part of our institute, the Bush Center, we're working on the 4 policy areas that I talked to you about, but running through those policy areas is a military veterans initiative to support our veterans, and then the women's initiative that the Egyptian Women's Fellowship was part of, that Dr. Jenkins served as a mentor to one of our fellows. So one of the things we're working on through the military initiative is trying to do a big survey of all the many veteran supporting groups that have popped up over the last few years and try to bring them together for best practices. And then George has both a golf tournament and a bike ride for Wounded Warriors. And their strength and their courage is really very inspiring to both of us.
Laura, one of the things that it didn't get a lot of publicity, but you and the president on a consistent basis went to see our troops that had been wounded. Mm-hmm. And talk a little about that.
Well, that, of course, is the hardest thing you have to do when you're a president and you put our troops in harm's way. But we did often go to Walter Reed and Bethesda and then to other military hospitals, San Antonio, for instance, when we were here in Texas. And that's very difficult. The amazing thing was how courageous our troops are, and wounded, very severely wounded troops would just, say to George, I just want to get back out there with my unit. There's something very inspiring about it. We're so fortunate in our country that people volunteer, such really fine people volunteer to serve in our military.
One of the things that the world in the last week has lost one of the great leaders of all time, in my opinion, Margaret Thatcher. And I know that she was very close to Reagan and President Bush 41. But y'all had the occasion to meet her. And say a little about what you and George think of her.
Well, we knew her really only through the Bushes, and I mean, obviously through President Reagan as well, and then for my father-in-law, President Bush, when he became president. But she was such an example for women, not just for men, but also this very classy woman. You know how she always was, her hair was fixed perfectly, and she was always dressed. I've really looked at all the pictures that have been in the newspapers and on television since Monday when she died, and sort of struck again by how she looked always, which I think was so terrific for a prime minister, a woman prime minister, female prime minister. But she just was tough and really led Britain in so many great ways. And the other thing about her, which was also true of Prime Minister Tony Blair when George was president, was that she was so aware of the special relationship. She was always very pro-American. And so was Tony Blair. And to know that that our country has that kind of friend in Great Britain is great solace, really, to our presidents, I think, and to our government. And I know it certainly was to President Reagan and President Bush, all during the time, her years and their years, of course, were the times of the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the rise of all those democracies, those Central and Eastern European democracies, which, by the way, are also very pro-American, those countries that George and I would visit. And they are very dependent on the friendship of the United States, and not just the friendship, but the alliance, the military alliance of the United States. And many of those Central and Eastern European countries they're all democracies, and they've now joined NATO and other alliances with the United States. But she was certainly a great friend to our country, and she'll be missed.
How many foreign trips did you take, or do you have a number? And
I went and visited 76 countries. But while George was president, and many with him on trips that he went on, but then also I went to Afghanistan 3 times solo. I did several trips to Africa. I could go to represent him in Africa, for instance, when he launched PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. And Barbara, our daughter, went with us when we launched it in 2003. And she was so struck by the story of one little girl in an AIDS clinic in Uganda who was so thin, you knew she was dying. But her mother dressed her in a beautiful white dress to meet the American president. And we don't know what happened to that little girl, but Barbara was so affected by it that she went back to Yale and took their big course on AIDS. And then when she graduated from Yale, she got a job in Cape Town, South Africa at a Red Cross Children's Hospital. And then that's really how she thought of starting Global Health Corps. She could find a job in Cape Town, South Africa because she knew somebody on the Global Health Desk at the State Department that knew somebody in the Red Cross Hospital. But she knew that a lot of other American and foreign young people who might want to serve in global health wouldn't have that kind of contact. And so that's what Global Health Corps is really. It's a way to give young people a chance to help health clinics or health ministries develop capacity to serve more people. So that was really great. And now our global health initiative that we're doing through the Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon, and Dr. Jenkins was at the launch of it, is called Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon. We've added the testing and treatment for cervical cancer, which is the leading cause of cancer death among African women, to the PEPFAR platform. Our partner is the U.S. State Department, because we're using the AIDS platform that was established while George was president, and now adding the testing and treatment for cervical cancer to it. And so George and I have been to Africa twice since we've been back. We refurbished a clinic last summer in Zambia, and this summer we'll be going and hosting a conference for African First Ladies, sponsored by Exxon, to get the word out to them about health issues and education as well. So we're still traveling a lot and enjoying that trip, because people in Africa, people literally say to George, "Thank you, you saved my life." Because about 7 million people now are on antiretrovirals, and they're living and not dying with AIDS.
You get a lot of accolades and everything, but I want to tell you that you did such a good job, and George did, with those girls. They are great kids, and they grew up with a dad that was president and governor, and that's not easy. And Jenna, I love Jenna. That night at the White House, she laughed at every story I told.
She did? She thought Kent was very hilarious, and we had him tell about every funny story we could think of. And actually, why don't you tell everyone about, remember when you were running against George and George was going to run in that marathon? George was quite athletic. I don't know that Kent was. Remember that story?
Yeah. One night at the White House, we were having dinner, and there were just Jody Arrington's with us, just the four of us. And the president looked over at me and he said, "Who did you hire to run in that marathon?" It had been like 20-something years. I thought he had forgotten. And he said, "Who was it?" And I said, I don't. And what the story was, there was a marathon, they were around 26 miles, and they asked George and I to run in it, and he signed up, and I didn't. And I hired a guy to run in it. And he had a Hance t-shirt, and his trunks had a Hance bumper sticker on the rear. And I said, "You stay 10 feet in front of him." If he speeds up, you speed up. If he slows down, you slow down. And anyway, the president, he was really ribbing about it. He said, look, I need to have IRS look into that guy. And he is just kidding, but it was really funny. We still laugh about some of those stories. And, you know, the Bushes, President Reagan told me something one time, that people have a tendency to vote for you, especially if they'd like to live next door to you. You'd love to live next door to the Bushes. They're just great people. And we appreciate all that you've done for women's health. And this group, we could go on, but we've got other things on the program. And we just want
lunch.
Like lunch. And we just want to tell you how much that we appreciate your friendship for the people in West Texas, your love for this area, and what you're doing on women's health issues. And I want to say one more time to the people in San Angelo, thank you. You are all stars, and I am very proud of you.
Thank you all, and thank you so much to the Laura Bush Institute for Women's Health for your life-saving work. Very thrilled about it. Thanks, everybody.
When we return, we take you to the transfer of the reins ceremony for the new masked rider and horse Fearless Champion. You're watching Inside Texas Tech with Chancellor Ken Hance.
You ever been responsible for someone else's pain like that?
Let's hope that what's in you will carry you through these times to a safer shore.
Do you never doubt?
No.
The changing of the reins from one masked rider to the next is a time-honored tradition at Texas Tech University, and it also came on the day that two Raider Reds, who earlier this year won a national championship, graduated and handed off Reds' famous six-shooters. ITT cameras were there to bring you this hallowed ceremony.
As you pass the guns to the new Raider Red, you are symbolically passing on the privilege as well as the honor of being Raider Red.
Texas Tech University won't just be getting a new head men's football and basketball coach next year, they'll also have a new Raider Red, Masked Rider, and Fearless Champion, Masked Rider's new steed. Zach Bowles and Jeff Waller were the former Raider Reds whose careers ended with a mascot national championship at the Capital One Bowl last year. They reflected on where their journeys began.
2 years ago, almost to the day, I was standing right out in that hallway that most of you entered through. I was in the costume, and I was waiting to come into the room for that passing the guns. Today, I'm here in this room, wearing regular clothes. Today, I'm the one passing the guns.
When I first told my parents that I was trying out for the mascot position here at Tech, they kind of tried to persuade me to go a different direction. I didn't really know why, because I thought it was so cool. But now that I made the team, they never showed more love. They're the ones who I have to thank the most, and I would definitely have to say that they're the inspiration to my freedom and my character.
A new masked rider will also take the field next semester. Ashley Wenzel had the position last year and can't believe how fast her time flew by.
When I started, 1 year sounded like a really long time, and standing here today, I honestly feel like I was standing here yesterday putting on my cape and things, and now I'm taking it off and retiring it. But it was amazing, but also fulfilling as well.
Corey Wagner takes the reins from Ashley, and as a Lubbock native, he can't wait to take the field and represent the university.
I grew up here in Lubbock, so I'm really looking forward to working with Tech and representing the Masked Rider program. I've been a Red Raider fan my entire life, so this is just something I'm in awe still, just on cloud nine.
Look for the new Raider Red and Masked Rider at events and games throughout the year. We wish them both best of luck.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Coming up next is Overheard with Evan Smith. Have a great evening.